This is the long put off DDLC wrap up. This is the first one that you're going to see of these, but when I'm done with the game, I tend to type some stuff, make up a little script, and read it about what I think of the game or some stuff I want to say at the end. Just to, I don't know, say stuff. Just in case people are curious what I think this random person on the internet thinks about this based off of how I reacted to it during the Let's Play or whatnot. I always like to know these things, like when someone else plays the game, what they think about it, because I'm interested in. I am somewhat interested in the minutia of why people like stories, because I like stories. I want to know why they like stories and whatever, or just want sort of the background information or something. I don't know what to call. As you can tell, I'm having a very difficult time describing this. Pretty informal, not very much of a production put. There is no production put on this whatsoever. And it's kind of like Microsoft Word, the Let's Play. Given I'm actually using LibreOffice, which you could argue is better than Microsoft Word, but whatever. So of course DDLC Plus is like a DLC of DDLC. It's an expansion, and it's a paid version. And so the first thing I like to talk about is what's in DDLC Plus that's not in DDLC. In other words, what do you get if you actually pay the price tag for DDLC Plus as opposed to just downloading the original free version of DDLC, which you can still do. So first, I guess, I don't remember what my script is, of course. So as far as I'm aware, Team Salvato has produced 3 products so far related to DDLC. And the 3 products are the original DDLC, the DDLC fan pack, and DDLC Plus. So DDLC is completely free to play and download. I have not played it, but I have clicked through the analog to it on DDLC Plus. I have downloaded the files for the original DDLC in order to test out something I'll talk about later. So I have it on my computer, but I haven't actually played through it in that port. I haven't actually launched the game from the original files and played through it. I have a long time ago, back after it's released, I watched several other YouTubers and streamers, not necessarily on a stream. Actually, I did. I think I've actually watched a stream VOD off Twitch of this, to be honest. So yeah, YouTubers and streamers play it. And so I've seen a lot of reactions to it, just because DDLC, of course, is very entertaining and it's fun to watch people react to it. Very much like Danganronpa, right? It's one of those video games where you can watch someone react to it, and then you can watch, and then another person goes up to Let's Play of the same game, and because it's a new person reacting to it, you watch another Let's Play and another Let's Play, and you can end up all addicted to watching Let's Plays of the same game over and over again. Anyway, and I did that before starting recording this whole series on DDLC Plus that I made. So when I played the original, in my first episode, I called it episode 0. I had already known everything was going to happen, and that's how I knew to do everything I did, right? It was released in 2017, and the website for it is a really simple short URL, ddlc.moa. Second product is the fan pack, and I don't know when Team Salvato released the fan pack, but as of right now, if you donate 10 USD at ddlc.moa, then he gives you the fan pack. Basically, you buy it for $10. That's the idea. What it has, I actually don't know. Because all I have is the description of it on the website, because I didn't actually ever buy it. But this is how Team Salvato describes it to be. And that is, complete DDLC official soundtrack with 24 tracks, including remixes, bonus tracks, sketches, and song variants not included in the game. High-resolution wallpapers of in-game art for desktop and mobile. I'll get back to that later, what that means exactly. DDLC concept art booklet, which includes concept art and developer notes providing insight into early stages of development. And his little blurb, our gratitude for helping us make more great games. I'll actually come back to that later, too. Then the third product was DDLC Plus, which is a paid variation of DDLC. DDLC Plus has many ports: PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, and Xbox. As far as I'm aware, the only ports that have a physical version are Switch, PS4, and PS5, with only digital available for PC and Xbox. The physical versions have physical extras, which include an extra poem, a code for downloading the soundtrack. I've played this on PC, so why I'm mentioning that because I didn't get any of the physical extras. The price on Steam at the time was 15 USD. The Xbox Digital is also 15 USD. Digital copies are between 20 and 30 USD depending on where you buy them. I think it's like the MSRP is 30 USD, or the game that's like Amazon and GameStop wants you to believe it is. Amazon does all kinds of fake manipulative pricing where they'll write a number and then they'll always write a number, cross it out, and write another number. No matter what the price is, they'll always like do that. So like they'll make you think there's like a price cut. But because the illusion has now been lost because Amazon does that for all of their products. It's how we know this. So we just know that in order the thing is crossed out, the thing in bold is the price, and it's probably going to be the price elsewhere too. Anyway, the thing crossed out, it's meaningless, is $30. How much you actually pay for it's probably going to be less. Anyway, and it was and the Plus, of course, was released in 2021, and the website for it is ddlc.plus, and there's a link to it from ddlc.moa as well. So, more details about the content of the original. So, the original is done, it's like pre-interpreted Python or Python bytecode is how the original is written. And you can extract the files of the original using a tool that can extract this Python bytecode. So, you could use something called RPA tool. And this allows you to extract the entire soundtrack of the original. And you get the OGG as the OGG files, and the bit rates are 1411 kilo. This is supposed to be kilobits per second, maybe. I'll go with that. KPS is not a real unit. I mean, it must have been a typo. And sampling rates are 44.1 kilohertz, and they come in 2 channels. I don't know if their channels are identical or not. You can also extract all the backgrounds and some versions of the CGs, as well as sprite components. The backgrounds are 1280 by 720 or 720p for short. What I mean by some versions of the CGs is you can only get the whole CGs for the version of them that appears in the end credits. Some of the CGs that you see in-game, they're composites. So, sometimes there's variations on the CG with different facial expressions. They do those by not actually having a whole separate image for each of the different facial expressions. They'll still take a base and they'll apply different faces and they'll compose different faces on top. So the only complete CGs you get are the ones that are shown in the end credits, so they can be ported into the end credits. The rest are piecemeal. You can also get the sprites, but in the same way they're done piecemeal. And you need the rest of the Python code to actually combine them in context of the game. So the reason why I mentioned this is, Dan said in what I was trying to say here, the fan pack, that you get high resolution versions. So I presume that you would get 1080p, 1440p, 4K versions of the wallpapers in game, wallpapers of in-game art. In the fan pack, which would be more than you would get just from the original download, because you can get these images. You just get them at 720p in the original. You don't have to pay anything for the soundtrack of the original or all the backgrounds and the main version of CGs at 720p. Okay. List of what's in the Plus version that's not in the original. So what do you get for the extra $15 in Plus if you buy the Plus, as opposed to just not buying anything because, it's free? Plus has a gallery of images that allows for viewing of in-game assets, or I guess I don't have to say in. There's definitely going to be typos in here because I make typos all the time. Allows for viewing of game assets in-game without playing to the part of the game which they're displayed. What I mean by that is you can see a background by just going to backgrounds and then clicking on a background as opposed to playing to part of the game where that background is there. And you can see it without the text box in front of it and without sprites over top. This includes, poems, including the special poems, backgrounds, and CGs. You do not need to get any files. You do not get any files, though, so this only matters essentially in that you can see the backgrounds and CGs in Plus that are not in the original, outside of the side stories, and by setting images as desktop in-game, you may reveal them at your monitor's native resolution. So it's not in that crazy winding sentence. basically, you get to view them outside the game, and you potentially get to view them at, I don't know if this is true, but it looks like it to me looking at my 1080p monitor. You get to view them at least your monitor resolution, and this might be up to 4K. I'm not sure. Maybe someone in the comments can clarify this for me. But it'll set the background of the game UI to. You can set the background of your game UI to that image, and then it'll display it on your monitor. And I'm presuming that resolution of the background display is much higher than 720p. So this allows you to view the backgrounds and CGs at higher resolution than occur in the original, which is, I guess, a little extra. And in addition, you also get to view the poems by themselves, which is includes special poems. And you get to see, and you of course also get to see the one new background and the CGs for the side stories, which you don't in the original because side stories aren't in the original, and you get to view them as well. But on the downside, you don't actually get files. It's not like Never 7, for example. You can actually save the files. Of course, Never 7 was back in 2002. Not Never 7, Ever 17. Of course, Ever 17 was back in 2002, and you couldn't get that even at 720p. Those are really low resolution images. Anyway, you can't actually get the files out of DDLC Plus at modern monitor resolutions. You can only kind of see them inside the game at that resolution. In order to get the files, you would have to at least buy the fan pack, you have to buy the fan pack, essentially. And the fan pack will only give you the files, as far as I would think, for the original game. But maybe the fan pack's been updated to give you them for the Plus as well. I'm not actually sure. Someone could answer that, who's actually bought the fan pack could answer that for me. The gallery contains sketches and concept art. How it overlaps with the fan pack is uncertain, because the fan pack also has sketches and concept art, right? So you get like a little bit of sketches and concept art in either one. Again, the images can only be viewed in game, and you don't get files for them. There's also promotional art, but the promotional art has all been posted on Twitter, I believe. So you actually have to go into DDLC Plus to view the promotional art, but it's there if you want to. The images are not available at first, but must be unlocked by performing certain actions within the game. Trying to find all the image in the gallery gives a new element to gameplay, right? So this is the whole idea of beating the game and 100%ing the game. So a lot of games have like a sort of a completion state where it tells you the end, and they have another state where it's like you've collected all the bonus and side stuff. Very common video game thing. So it allows for a new kind of gameplay, right? Trying different things, trying to unlock these new images in the game DDLC. Like the original DDLC, all there was that you could trigger these Easter eggs. You get like the ghost menu and stuff like that, but you wouldn't be trying to get them if you didn't know they were there, because you didn't have the goal of collecting all of the images, right? So DDLC Plus, maybe artificially, but tries to give you some sort of motivation to try to do extra, to interact with the game to an extra degree, and makes another game out of it. So it adds more gameplay. It adds more game to the game, you could say. Plus, it's a feature in-game with which you can listen to all the background music tracks in the game on their own. These include tracks by Nikki Kaler, Jason Hayes, and Azuria Sky. There are 27 tracks in total, with one of them being a prank, and 2 versions of the same composition. There are no files with the digital versions, only the physical versions come with a code that allows you to download audio files. You can buy the soundtrack on Steam for $10 as a separate product on Steam, and I presume that will give you the files, of course. It is unknown to me what extent the soundtrack for Plus overlaps with that of the fan pack. The reason why I say that is because, this is a typo, the fan pack apparently has like extra tracks in it, and that might end up being updated when Plus comes out. Although the soundtrack for Plus itself is a product, so maybe not. Release of soundtracks as separate products tend to correlate with various types of copyright difficulties YouTube Let's Players can have. This is something I encounter, is that sometimes game developers want to release the soundtrack as its separate product, and then they'll register that soundtrack they'll hire a record label to produce it. The record label has a content ID with YouTube, and they will copyright claim your gameplay footage because it has in the background game background music, which is in their the repertoire. And then so sometimes if a game has the soundtrack released as a separate product, you might want to do some, try to find maybe some soundtracks somehow, get some audio files, try to upload to YouTube and test and see if you get copyright claim for them. If you do, that you might want to let's play the game with the sound background music off. Um, just like kind of like a word of caution for let's players. I don't know if that because the soundtrack is a separate product, it could end up being that I end up retroactively getting copyright claim on some of my old DDLC videos in the future. Um, and I don't know what to do about that. Anyway, also, because like you don't know any, we release a let's play, you might not get copyright claimed immediately when you put it up, but then a company may decide later that it wants to release the soundtrack as its own separate product later on, and then they'll either give it to a record, give it to a record label, and then that label will then claim your stuff, or they will manually issue takedowns on all your videos, like Nintendo did to somebody. Or just all the ones that had the background music for that game. Plus includes a meta layer story with characters Paula, Ro, Lib, and Ive, employees of Metaverse Enterprise Solutions. The story is told through two media, emails and secret files. The emails unlock in reverse chronological order as more data is collected. Secret files are unlocked by finding the correct timestamp for each file. It's a scavenger hunt for timestamps. The story in Metaverse Enterprise Solutions adds to the iceberg and adds more gameplay in unlocking the secret files, as unlocking the secret files is a puzzle. This should be an as, not an in. Oh, in that. Okay, yeah, that's correct. I didn't mess up. In that, unlocking the secret files is a puzzle. So it adds another element of gameplay, right? You gotta find all the timestamps to get all the secret files. Another thing for you to do. Plus, once all data is collected, gives you more teasers as to something. It may be a string-along thing that are related to Easter eggs for the original game. These come in small phrases viewed at random by the test VM button. And there's like a Reddit subreddit where these are compiled, and MatPat has a good video where he like reads out in a nicely organized way a compilation of all the test VM fragments. The most highly anticipated addition to Plus is the side stories, more interactions between the characters of DDLC. The side stories do not have any gameplay as the original does. There are no decisions, poem building, visual gimmicks, like the flashes and the glitching. There's none of that. Like your cursor being sucked to a certain button. There's none of that in the side stories. Or things to do to progress, like deleting Michael's character file. You don't have any of that in side stories either. I'd argue that they don't make Let's Play content because there's no player performance involved, despite them existing inside a game. The side stories are not technically a prequel since the timeline eventually overlaps with the original game, without the MC in it, of course. But because all of their timelines, because all of their timelines occur before the original game, and before when the MC would have joined Literature Club, they feel pretty much like a prequel. So it's like, they're technically not a prequel, but gee whiz, they're a prequel, essentially. They're a prequel that's not a prequel by technicality. Okay. So all of this is just a bunch of like me messing around with these parts of the soundtrack, those parts of the soundtrack, background images and CGs in different resolutions, and Easter eggs and concept art, and it's just a whole matter of that and how much you care about that, which of these products you buy or not buy. Is it worth it? I say this is always a bit of a silly question because I would have had to buy the game no matter what if I was going to answer it. If I bought the game, that means there must have been a time I guessed that it was going to be worth it. The only way to answer, no answer would make sense is if the game delivered less than I was expecting. When I bought DDLC Plus, I was not expecting anything. Right. There was some content and I was like, okay, cool. I was actually surprised by the price though, because I don't buy video games very often until I started this YouTube thing. And the game, I bought one game before I bought DDLC Plus, and it was Control. And Control actually had two DLCs included with it. And Control is a very demanding FPS game that I wanted to play so I could demonstrate to myself how nice my PC gaming hardware I bought was. I haven't played it yet, but eventually I will. And I'll record it I believe when I do that, if as long as there's no copyright issues with Control, I have to look up if there might be copyright issues, whether or not I can get away with actually recording it. But um, it costs $17. So, and I thought it was this very like triple, like high production value, super fancy AAA game. When DDLC plus, when I went to go buy DDLC plus, if I was $15, I was like, whoa, um, this is just an extension to a game that's already free. I guess this would kind of make sense if this was the original DDLC was in this was like this was the only way to get it. Like that was part of the product. But the DDLC is already free. It just the only thing you get for DDLC Plus is like little extra bits, right? But I mean, I still bought it. Like I didn't go, never mind. No, I was like, this is more than I expecting. I paid it anyway. Like it didn't turn me off. It was that much, but it did kind of surprise me. Um, yeah. Plus, and the fan pack are very similar ideas. Both right, yeah, they both give you concept art. They both give you higher resolution backgrounds and CGs, although different ways, of course. They also give you extra tracks in the soundtrack, so they're very similar. Plus, can be thought of as a fan pack over an overglorified pan pack. The purchase of Plus, I think, is like a donation as a fan. I didn't want to think of myself as a DDLC fan, but uh, as though this I is a typo, as though I didn't have enough respect for the game to call myself one. But maybe I was because I bought the thing. So I mean, what do you mean? What can I say? I was enough of a DDLC fan to buy the Plus, so I'm I'm guilty of being a DDLC fan, I guess, even though I never thought of myself as one. But yeah, like what I mean by think of it as a donation as a fan is Team Salvato is kind of a small time developer, and when you see that TDLC Plus costs $15, my thought wasn't necessarily like comparing the product you get for the money in its entirety, but more of if I pay for this, then that'll help fund Team Salvato in making the next game. So it's kind of like a donation. And it's kind of like the fan pack in the same way. It's like if you donate $10, we give you this fan pack. Well, it's kind of like you're purchasing it for $10, but it's kind of like that expensive because it's like a donation. So it's kind of like not necessarily is what you get for paying those $15 to DDLC Plus worth that. It's is what Team Salvato is going to make with that money worth it? It's more the better question. How I thought of what do I think about DDLC? This is kind of a very long section here. I always thought of DDLC as a parody of Japanese origin visual novels, particularly the harem genre. It definitely and it specifically says Monica specifically says in one of her monologues that this game takes place in Japan, as well as the character names being character names that you could create theoretically by arranging Japanese hiragana to describe the pronunciation. Now, as I understand, you don't usually write people's names in hiragana in Japanese. You usually write them in like kanji, but and if it's a borrowed name, if it says a foreigner's name, you write it in katakana. Let me make sure I can really mess up this part here. Okay, cool. Um, According to the YouTuber Bijou Mike, it was inspired by a game called You, Me, and Her, A Love Story, and some other YouTubers as well. There's a post made on Reddit by jcraig96 where he claims that this is not true, but and he says that there's some post somewhere made by Down Salvato where he specifically denies that he even heard of the game You, Me, and Her. But the similarities between the two games but the similarities between the two games are a coincidence. I didn't read all of his post to know the details though, because I wanted to avoid spoilers from You, Me, and Her. The only thing I do know about You, Me, and Her, besides that it's similar to DDLC Plus, is it has a similar fourth wall break. I do not know how it is similar. In what way the fourth wall break is similar. And the reason why I want to kind of avoid spoilers beyond that from this point on is it's possible that I could directly let's play that game, but the reason why I wouldn't, and why I'm not going to do so immediately, and why, although it is like on my list of games I could do towards the bottom, it's like the game that I would do if I didn't have anything else to play, like it prevents me from drying up, is because I already have DDLC and Never 7 recorded, let's plays them recorded. And those are both harem games. And I didn't want my YouTube channel to be too saturated with harem games, because I presume You, Me, and Her is also a harem game. I want it to be filled with mostly like mystery games and thriller games and not harem games. I just didn't want it to be known as the harem game YouTuber. So it's kind of way on the back burner. But I still don't want spoilers for You, Me, and Her. So I don't know more about You, Me, and Her besides it. If you were to play You, Me, and Her, you would think that it inspired Doki Doki. And it has a similar fourth wall break to Doki Doki. That's all I know. Don't know if you should play it or not, whether or not you'll like it. Supposedly, if you like DDLC, you would like You, Me, and Her. Yeah, now, there is another, so I'm going to talk this part, just to explain what's going to happen next. There is another couple games that I've played that also have a lot of similarities with DDLC, and I'm going to explain what those are. This is somewhat lower profile. Like, if you Google similarities between You, Me, and Her and DDLC, you'll get a lot of stuff, right, including a lot of YouTube videos. If I Google, like, similarities between DDLC and these other games, I won't get anything. So, as far as I know, I'm one of the few, if only, people to actually do this. But the point, these two games are entitled Never 7, The End of Infinity, and Ever 17, The Out of Infinity. They are written by a extremely famous visual novel writer who's the master of multiple endings. He is Kotaro Uchikoshi, who's written a game called 999, 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, which some people say is the greatest visual novel of all time. It's very, very famous. But Never 7 and Ever 17 aren't his most famous games, of course. Stuff he wrote later on in his career are more famous. But they're very... but these games have very... I don't know, House of Cards, but they're very spoiler sensitive. They're games where you really want to go into them super blind, the nature of the game. It's very much like Danganronpa is super spoiler sensitive. Like, if you say, hey, you could play Danganronpa, you'll like it. You don't tell him anything else besides that going into it. You can't show any footage of it without spoiling something. So I'm going to describe how Never 7 and Ever 17, like how they're similar to the similarities between them and DDLC, and what that's going to do. Again, it's got the white text thing going on. And this is going to essentially require extremely heavy spoilers for both these games. And so if you want to actually ever play these games, or in the future, then I'm going to try to use the chapter function in YouTube to put in the history bar how much the video subtends this part, so you can skip it using the history bar, so you don't get spoiled about these two games, because these are very... This next thing I'm going to do is very spoilery for both the games, extremely spoilery. So these are two games in a series. Yeah, just like starting now. These are two games in a series. They're released in 2000 and 2002 respectively. Never 7 being the first one, Ever 17 being the second one. Ever 17 is extremely good. Never 7 isn't necessarily as good or well praised, but people play it just because the author, the name of who wrote it. Like, even if Tom Clancy didn't write a good book, you'd think it wrote a bad book, you'd still think it's good because Tom Clancy wrote it. Like that kind of idea. And because it's background for Ever 17. So some people want to play it before they play Ever 17 because it's like play the next game in the series. That being said, you do not absolutely have to play Never 7 before you play Ever 17. Ever 17 has references to it. But so it does give you something if you play Never 7 first, but you still get like 99.99% of the experience of Ever 17 if you have not played Never 7 first. In fact, you miss out on like getting meta messed with if you don't play Never 7 first. So Never 7 falls very much into the genre that so how much of this do I go here? Okay, that's pretty good. Falls very much into the genre that DDLC is trying to parody. And so it uses tropes of the genre that DDLC is trying to parody. So very much so, this doesn't necessarily mean that Don Salvato heard of Never 7. It's just that the genre he's trying to parody is the same genre Never 7 falls into. And so the archetypes, that's going to force these things to line up, just by genre. So we'll go into that. They're both visual novels of or parody Japanese origin, with path differentiating choices. So they're both like pure visual novel with different paths you can go down depending on your choices. For example, you can choose to go to help Yuri with the decorating, or you can choose to help Natsuki with the baking. And if you make a different choice, you go through a different whole set of scenes, right? They're both like that, where you make choices and you go different ways. Given that, although the art isn't nearly as pretty in Never 7, the writing is way more intense in Never 7. Like, there's a lot more like effort put into the storytelling of Never 7 than DDLC. They're both harem games, where there's a bunch of female characters that all happen to really like the MC, despite the MC not having anything about him of any significance whatsoever that you would think that would draw the woman to him, although the girls may claim there is. It makes me feel uncomfortable that every single female character in a story can fall in love with the MC, as if the game is insulting me or something. Yeah, it's like the game's like thinking, like saying, you want this, don't you? You want to live in a world where every girl falls on you, right? It's kind of weird. Harem games feel very, very weird to me. It's like weird that you think I want this. It's weird. I don't really like it, but they both have that nature where the MC's kind of a jerk, and Never 7, the MC's not a jerk, but he's somebody that like there's nothing really special about him. He's just like a dude, and all the girls like come after him just by being there. And the girls have their reasons. They have like their nostalgia or whatever for going after the main character. But it's still weird. And like every single woman in the game is a possible like romantic interest. And you could have any of them you wanted if you just go down their route. Not nearly how the real world works. You say, well, it's fiction. Fiction's not supposed to be like the real world. Where some people are into some people, other people aren't into other people. It's supposed to be an escape into something different. But it's like, yeah, but that's something I don't want you to think I want to escape into. That's just too lowball an escape. In both games, the main character is a boy with black, kind of spiky and backward-facing, swooped-back hair. His eyes are never shown as well. So both of these games, you only see the back. In DDLC, man, I'm drawing out. I'm going to cough. In DDLC, you only see the back of the MC's head. In Never 7, you actually kind of see the front of his face in like at one point, although you usually only see the back of his head, but they don't show his eyes when they do that. So the MC is always in both games is eyeless, essentially. And he both has black spiky hair. The difference is that the MC in Never 7 actually has a name. They actually give him a name, and he's Makoto Ishihara. The characters have a near one-to-one map of similar archetypes. I'm stretching the meaning of similar a bit here, but they're roughly similar. Like, this is a bit of a stretch. Sayori is kind of like Yuka or Kurumi. They're similar archetypes. Yuri has a similar archetype to Haruka. Natsuki is a similar archetype to Saki. Monika is similar to Izumi. This is really stretching it. They're similar in that, and I told you there's going to be spoilers here. I warned you, because this is where the big spoilers come in. Izumi is the character where she seems to not have a route at first. And Monika, of course, also seems to not have a route at first, and turns out she just straight up doesn't have a route. Izumi, a route eventually opens up, so it's a little bit different in that respect. And she's the character where there's a lot more to her than meets the eye at first. So they're both similar in that way. Saki and Natsuki are similar in that they are both like the tsunderes. Yuri and Haruka are similar in that they're like the tall, dark, long-haired girl with like the quiet, breathy voice, and is really smart. Although Haruka's intelligence isn't emphasized as much as Yuri's is, there is like some lines where Haruka's described as being really smart. And then Sayori and Yuka and Karumi, they're like kind of like the carefree kind of characters. The kind of the wild characters. Actually, Yuka is literally described as carefree. Anyway. Also, Sayori and Yuki are similar in that they're both like the characters pushed in your face. They're like kind of like the starting girl. Both games you play through the same time period twice at two separate acts. Basically, in both you go through twice, right? DTLC has acts 2 and 4, but... Oh, I meant to say 3 and 4. Has acts 3 and 4, right? It's the Just Monaco act and then the one where you Sayori's the president. But they're not at full length, right? So you really only go through the whole game about 2 almost full length times. Now, the mechanisms behind how this is done are totally different, but also in Never 7, you go through the timeline twice. Now, of course, it's an Uchikoshi game, so Never 7 is like a multiple ending game, but all of those multiple endings you go through twice. So both of these are going through twice games. In both games, the quite tall and intelligent girl with long dark hair holds the MC's hand to her chest with the prompt that the MC feel her heartbeat. In Never 7, there's a CG of it. In DDLC, there is not a CG of it, but it happens, right? Yuri holds the MC's hand to her chest. In Never 7, the MC is introduced to be a college student in the literature department. This is plot cover, actually. Told you there was going to be spoilers. There's like more to it than that, but that's how he's introduced, is he's in the literature department. Is there more here? Appears that, wow. Office software fail. So I think I missed this bullet, but something they forgot to mention here is both Never 7 and, well, I'll keep on highlighting. I'll keep doing this. Did I goof something up? Okay. For some reason I missed this bullet, but both of them have suicide in them. Now it's different character archetypes. Well, not necessarily. And they both have 2 suicides. Or suicide success with respect to 2 of the characters. For some reason that didn't appear in my bulleted list, but that's another one. Another way that they are both similar. And that's probably that again. Pretty much all of these things are not really showing evidence that Dan Salvato has actually ever heard of Never 7. They are mostly just because the genre that Never 7 falls so cleanly into the genre that Doki Doki is parroting. They end up being extremely similar. And if you play Never 7 after DDLC, it's kind of like watching Star Wars after you've watched Spaceballs. It's kind of effect you get. Okay. Ever 17 is the second game in the same series as Never 7. It's just like the genre kind of goes somewhere crazy with Ever 17. It has somewhat different genre than Ever 7. Sort of comes off the harem game genre. There's this somewhat harem-y, but it's not like the archetype like Never 7 is. Because it doesn't fall into the genre that DDLC is parodying as well as Never 7, there are fewer similarities between Ever 7 and DDLC than between Ever 17 and DDLC than between Never 7 and DDLC. I hate that Ever 17 and Never 7 are so similar like titles. Throws me off. Anyway, in fact, it's not in the same if not in the same series as Never 7, these vague similarities may not even be worth mentioning. These are huge spoilers for this game, and this game is really good. So you may want to just go play it as opposed to, like, watch, skip this part using the history bar, go play it, and then listen to this afterwards. Okay, but too late going into the list. There's some silly things, of course. Ever 17, they have another girl holding the MC's hand to her chest in a completely different context than the other two games, but happens. There's also there's the want to die shows up again as usual, and you can also stretch it to say that Ever 17 you also go through the game twice. How this is really different than the other two games do it, and it's kind of, at first it tries to trick you into thinking that it's the same kind of thing as Never 7. But that trick didn't work on me because I knew of the plot of a later game that Uchikoshi would write later in his career that would reuse ideas from Ever 17. Although it wouldn't reuse the ideas to do another double plot, but it would reuse that same mechanism to do something else. And so, because I knew like the meta on both sides, I didn't necessarily fall for the trick of thinking that it was Never 7 all over again, and I was actually doing something different this time. But anyway, Ever 17 does have a little does have some sort of doubling in it as well. You're still going through the plot twice kind of aspect as well. For some reason, this didn't turn into a bullet. Anyway, this is supposed to be a new bullet right here. Here, this is the big one. As you play through the game, and you get to a point where it appears that a pharmaceutical company, they say, as this offhand comment, Kotaro Uchikoshi really has it out for pharmaceutical companies, is kidnapping children with exceptional capabilities, specifically to do experiments on them. And I will restore this stuff. Try to create the ultimate human. There's also a character working for this pharmaceutical company that is specifically researching the third eye. Now, so this kind of makes you go, okay, so is Lieblich okay, I'll give you the name. The name is called Lieblich Pharmaceuticals in Ever 17, is do experiments on children in order to unlock the third eye. And that would be very much like how the plot of this story that the DDLC Iceberg is trying to describe, a religious cult that's kind of sciencey, that's taking exceptional kids and like mixing and matching their limbs and trying to create a way to break through and unlock the third eye. That being said, the game doesn't really pursue, Ever 17 doesn't really pursue this. So the person who's researching the third eye, who's working for Lieblich, is kind of a good person and not really bad. It's not really in it with Lieblich. And it makes it unclear. It makes it so it doesn't specifically say that Lieblich was specifically researching the third eye or had any interest in it. So it doesn't really go all the way. It takes the third eye, the term the third eye, literally written the third eye, takes human experimentation specifically on children and juxtaposes them and then makes it even closer by someone who works for them, by researching the third eye and various other connections between them, but it doesn't strictly go Lieblich was researching the third eye. It doesn't actually do that. But you can still say maybe you could be inspired and sort of by that and sort of think that, right? So we have human experimentation and the third eye in Ever 17 and in DDLC. You might go, the third eye might be a very common term in sci-fi, and so that may not be so exceptional, except that the first game in that same series fits so well into the genre that DDLC is parodying. And that makes you sort of notice it. Here's even bigger spoilers now. In Ever 17, the third eye is originally explained to be the ability to view the flow of time from outside of it and see alternate timelines. They often described it as a pixel can't see the screen, but if you go out away from it, then you can see the whole screen. It's like if you go out away from the world, go out of time, then you can see time. Now, they describe it as seeing in the fourth dimension. And I wouldn't describe it like that. You'd actually have to see an embedding of it into some higher, but whatever. It's just some higher dimension that you could embed a 4D manifold into. So I don't really know necessarily like the language they use to describe it in Ever 17, but it's the ability to look out and see all of time at once, essentially, and see what happens in different alternate timelines. It's called the third eye. And later, the game goes all meta with it and says that the third eye is actually the player. You, as the person playing the game, can see all these timelines because you can make different choices that allow you to see all of them. And so the third eye really is like you playing the game. Now, why is this like DDLC? Because in DDLC, the third eye is a way of communicating from inside the simulation to outside the simulation. So the characters in VM2's way of communicating with the people who made VM2. That would be like Paula and Ro and Lib and Ive. And so that's kind of like the characters in the game be able to communicate with the person outside the game playing the game. It's very similar. It's like the computer program communicating with the people of the world that made it. So similar ideas as to what the third eye is, as well as the third eye, the concept, the name the third eye being mentioned. And of course, Ever 17 breaks the fourth wall, and has a character. They both break the fourth wall, similarity, and it's a character that acts like a representative of the people, the people of the game to you. It's like there's a person in the game that's like a spokesperson for the game. Kind of like Monica is a spokesperson for DDLC. So I'm gonna rehide this text, and this is where the spoilers for Never 7 and Never 17 will end. Cool. So more about, so I mentioned this before, but it's like Spaceballs, JetBlue, okay. Okay, so now getting into like kind of how DDLC makes me feel. The way Monica talks to the player, or she's like giving you advice about how to write poetry, and is telling you stuff like, are you getting a good sleep? It's like she's trying to like parent you, almost. And she's trying to treat you like you're a high school kid. Now, this kind of makes sense in context because that's the only thing that Monica really knows is high school kids. Unless we go into the iceberg and see that she has an analogous character in a different game, but whatever. And so she would talk to you like you're also a high school kid. But it kind of makes the game kind of condescend a little bit. Condescend with a negative connotation. So like modern contemporary English condescend, not like early modern English condescend. If you don't know what I mean, the word condescend originally, like in earlier versions of English, meant just to come down to someone's level, right? To just explain something to someone, explain a high concept to people in a way they could understand. To come down to meet someone somewhere, right? And that over time, that word started to develop a negative connotation. It started to become a lot like the word patronizing. But originally, like, it's not how, if you look back into history, that's not how it was always used to be used. It used to be kind of a neutral connotation word. Anyway, just like the word awful, right? It used to mean like awful, and it turned into like awful in that it is bad. Sometimes words tend to pick up negative connotations over time. But if the game condescends, and there's somewhat of a negativity to how it condescends a little bit. So it makes the game feel a little bit immature. It feels like, although a lot of adults play DDLC, it feels like Dan wasn't expecting it or something because of the way Monica talks in the game. Anyway, the game is very entertaining to watch people play due to how it murders the cuties and how Monica coldly subjects them to mental illness. And first-time reactions to DDLC are very entertaining. If you're one of the weird few people who are watching this for some reason and haven't watched Matt Pat's Here Till DDLC playthrough, I don't really, it's like the reactions are way overblown, but it's like, wow. Like, I would never do that reading any story. Like, I never would jump back on the couch or anything, but it's entertaining. Sometimes we don't like I don't like fake reactions because they're fake, and sometimes I'm like, but I know it's fake, so it's fine. And then it's like, but it's Matt Pat, and I trust him to not be fake. Anyway. Also, there's a certain sort of mechanism I really like because I kind of admire the skill it takes to do it called creeping dread. So creeping dread is when you reveal the answer to a mystery too early, intentionally. If, and the idea is the answer is so bad that you don't want to believe it's true. So you could drop a lot of hints at it, and you could make it somewhat obvious objectively, but because the player's emotional investment, they don't want to believe it. But then because there's so much evidence, they slowly have to get it, and then have to, like, once it's revealed, they kind of have to accept it. I know of a very good example of creeping dread, but I don't want to say it because it's spoilers for that game, so I won't. DDLC kind of does that a little bit, in that they have that opening disclaimer. This game is disturbing. So as you go through the first act, you know something bad and disturbing is going to happen. And you're like, because it spoiled you already. And you go, but you could think, okay, this kind of like ruined the surprise. But it does something, it does a creeping dread. So it does like, once Sayori gets depression, because you know the disclaimer, you know it's probably going to get real dark. And it's going to get real dark based off that. You can sort of see it coming. So when you walk into Sayori's room the morning of the festival, it isn't really, you're kind of expecting to see a suicide. Like, you know it's coming. You don't want to believe it, and then it happens to you. As opposed to just you just get surprised by seeing it. Creeping dread is something that I really like in games. And it's like there's certain things that if you put that in the game, suddenly I'll like it a whole lot more. It's like a weird, like, ways to manipulate me into liking a game a lot. One of the ways to do that is just, it could be totally junk, just put in like creeping dread, and then I'll like it. Or it could be totally junk and put in that stoic, highly capable girl that you ordinarily could not talk to, like wouldn't be able to start a conversation with, but you can because you and her are trapped in a confinement for plot by plot contrivance. Then when you do that, then suddenly that's a really easy trope to pull, and suddenly I'll like the game. Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, just kind of like general things. Um, so there's a lot of this out there, but just kind of recap of like the Easter egg iceberg stuff from the original game, which you don't actually get to explore in the 2017 version. You don't have to get to explore in the Plus in the 2021 version, but you get to see in the 2017 version. So it's kind of like this is like me showing that I've seen this stuff now, even though I haven't actually played the original. It's like me making up for not playing the original here. The Nothing Is Real poem. This is so this is the one of the special poems where most of the text is blacked out. Well, that's if you up the contrast on that image, you will unlock this little piece of story. And it goes something like this. This is one of the special poems. Irregular heartbeat, heart palpitations, arrhythmia. I search and search, eyes scanning everywhere I can find on their symptoms. What is this? Shortness of breath, chest pain, dizziness? No, this is all wrong. Alyssa's symptoms are nowhere near this simple. I've seen it twice now. The screams of pain, sickening pale skin, vomiting blood. Oh, this sounds like oh dear. Oh, another similarity found. Okay. There is not other explanation. I thought I copy and pasted this. Oh well. Maybe I made a typo. Other than Rainier's information that was a complete and utter lie. Or Rainier's information was a complete and utter lie. This can't all be coincidence. It's not possible. I don't know how much of this Rainier is behind, but I do know this. There is something horribly wrong with this family. And I accepted an invitation to become a part of it. And I hear Alyssa's screams through the walls now. I listen helplessly. Rainier said that he would be with her shortly. Is he in her room now? Why is she screaming even louder than before? And the mainstream, guess as to what this means is that this person is written by the communicator between VM2 and Paula and Ive's universe, which Matt Papcars calls Marla. Anyway. Project Libitina. Before I go on for the Nothing Is Real poem, this seems to be completely unsolved by the player-based mystery of DDLC Plus. So I'm going to toggle back to DDLC Plus here. Let me Alt-Tab to OBS to make sure what's happening is what I expect. Um, there we go. So here I am in the game. Um, the Nothing is Real poem in DDLC Plus has different spacing between like where these fragments of Nothing is Real are located than the original poem from the original game. In other words, it looks different. And that suggests that there's actually a new secret message in the DL Plus Nothing is Real poem that is different from the one in the original DDLC. And this is something that MatPat has not figured out. He has not figured this out at all. And I don't know if anybody has figured this out. I've tried to look it up, but a lot of people have not figured this out and are asking the same question as me. What is the solution? What is hidden behind this? It could be nothing. It could be nonsense. If you do try to up the contrast on this, you'll find that there is a periodic pattern that has a period of about 10 boxes of increasing and decreasing size to these boxes that you can't really see if you don't throw the contrast up. But it's just a 10 box periodic repeating box size pattern. It's not doesn't suggest any letters inside. Something that people have done is they have like changed the language. So let's try Hanguka. So Honguka apply, and let's go into the gallery here. See if that changes. Um, Changes the special poems text. Um, you see if anything's special, and I think in some of the languages you do find some weird marks in here, but no one's really found the meaning of them. I actually haven't found the weird marks. Um, I think Japanese is supposedly kind of interesting. So, um, let's see here. This is, I think, Chinese. Yeah, we're gonna do English. Apply English. Now I can read these. Uh, yeah, okay. Okay, this is probably traditional Chinese. This is middle country. This is probably simplified Chinese. So this must be the Japanese. That's interesting. So is that day, and then that's like it's like paper, but it's also there's multiple meanings to that one. The first one I think of is like paper, but there's actually another meaning. That's probably what it means when it's in Japanese. Anyway, here we are Japanese. Um, then we look at the Nothing is Real poem, and it's very what people notice is there's very few characters. Now the kind of could be just because the nature of what they're writing in Japanese, they could abbreviate a lot of it with kanji, and so um, they can write it in much fewer characters. But fans have noticed how oddly short this looks. Um, Although they might be just because they don't really understand how Japanese works. Um, and of course, we can go to the traditional Chinese, um, simplified Chinese. That's the Chi-Com language. Traditional Chinese, or just to resist the regime. Anyway, you expect it to be kind of short because it's Chinese, but I mean it's really long in Chinese, so don't know how that works out. Anyway, that symbol means door. I should know what this is, but like I forgot. That means now, I think. That first symbol. This symbol means up. No, I don't know much Chinese. I should know what this. I recognize this one, but I don't actually know what it. I don't know what it means off the top of my head. This means mouth. This means big, I think. Anyway. This is a variation on door, so this might be something related to the meaning of door. This symbol here, like, reminds me of, like, there's a symbol that means kind of like boy or son or man, all three of those. It looks like this, but has a little, like, a line through the middle. Like, without the line, I don't know what it means. Okay. Well, I'll change it back to English before I move on. So that's something that's not solved. So if you want to solve something that has not been solved in DDLC, try to figure out how to unlock what's underneath the DDLC Plus version of the Nothing Is Real poem. I would think that maybe it doesn't seem like you can interact with it when you unlock it, because any sort of user input is just going to make it move on to the next screen. However, you can put it as a wallpaper, and you can view it in the gallery. But yeah, you can view it, but like there doesn't seem to be any like interactivity. Like anytime you try to user input I make, just like puts it back down. Now, user input doesn't make it move anywhere when it's on your background, right? You can click as much as I want to on this, and it doesn't go away, but it doesn't appear to be like this box drawing mechanic, for example. It's the only one I know of you can do on the desktop, and it doesn't do anything. So, it's like you click through each box individually all the way to the end, and eventually something happens or something. I don't know. So, if you can figure that out, that's a big deal. Okay, got it back. Okay, Project Libitina. This is basically, you can get this from deciphering Sayori.char. You Sayori.char, I believe, is actually a audio file, and then you can Fourier transform it, and then it makes a QR code, and then you can scan the QR code. It takes you to this website called projectlibitina.com, and this is what's on it. Monthly examination report, January 5th, 2004. Name, unknown Libitina. Date of birth, 1st of January 5th, 2001. It's a girl, age 3, height 35 inches, weight 31 pounds, wing A, room 114. Significance level, 100. This was last updated on December 5th, 2003. As of December 5th, all personnel are forbidden from editing this field. All previous subject notes have been erased permanently. Addendum: introducing bias during testing as a result of personal attachment to the subject will henceforth be punished by death. And then her BMR is 17.8, heart rate is 90 BPM. The high number for blood pressure is 101, low number is 559. That's pretty low blood pressure. It's like hypotensive. No, it is that mine's high. That's why I look at that and go, it's low. 98.6, normal eyes, normal ears, normal teeth, normal genitals, pain tolerance 3, which is normal. Physical eye results, HR is 160. We don't know what HR means. Reaction time is 1 millisecond. Strength is not applicable. Local distortion 434. Distortion decay 29. Positivity 1. Sensitivity 9. Control 1. So basically, she has a lot of sensitivity to the third eye, but she can't really, she's kind of crazy. Physical notes: the following occasional behaviors have been noted should be ignored in future examinations. Twitching, vocal tics, biting, epiphora, vomiting, screaming, harm to examiner, harm to self, misplaced laughter. Any self-harm attempts must be interrupted immediately. Physical response test passed. Emotional response test passed. Physical control test failed. Emotional control test failed. Third eye activation test 100. Third eye suppression test, 8. Sexual response test, not applicable because she's a 3-year-old. Minor threat response test, 100. Minor threat elimination test, 100. Life threat response test, 100. Life threat elimination test, 100. Sexual response test is bypassed during prepubescence. Requested bypassing the following tests: third eye activation test, third eye suppression test, life threat response test, life threat elimination test, all requests denied. Libitina has not yet recovered from the termination of X, and is not expected to do so in the near future. Continuing to administer these tests will only accelerate the deterioration of Libitina's health. Are choosing to avoid the measures necessary to prevent a repeat scenario. Doctor, will you not have as much faith in your personnel as you do in your God? End of report. And there are pictures on like the DDLC merch store that some people would interpret as pictures of Libitina because she's holding a knife and looks like she's crazy. Story in the box. So this is Dan Salvato in 2015 wrote this random story, put it in a wooden box, and just put it in some random place in a mall. Then some anonymous person found it and anonymously posted it on Thought Catalog. So she found this, like, locked this box, opened it, found a story inside, read it, and then put it, and posted it on Thought Catalog. So it's kind of like this prank thing. And then Don Salvato later revealed that he was the one who wrote the story, and he put it in, and he basically put it in Yuri.chr. It doesn't really give you any plot hints or Easter egg things, or should I say it, hints about the next new games or anything. It's just a story that he wrote. But I haven't actually read the story yet, so this will be like a first-time reaction of me to this story on recording. So this is what Dan wrote and left in a box in a mall in 2015. You found this note in a small wooden box with a heart on it. Then congratulations. Oh, this is an if statement? You're probably the first person to read this. Well, I'm definitely not. I didn't really plan on sharing this with anybody, but for some reason I think it's exciting that somebody out there, a complete stranger, will come across this note and read my story. Someone I will never meet, sharing such a personal bond with me. I'm fascinated that either one of us could die, even as soon as tomorrow, with the other being completely clueless to the fact. To you, my entire life is within this note, so I will live for as long as your memory can carry me. Writing this, I'm wondering if that makes you feel fascinated or violated. It's so exciting. I'm sorry if my story is a bit disorganized, but I'd like to get it down while it's still fresh on my mind. First, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a first-year college girl, and I've led, by most standards, a pretty unspectacular life up to this point. I grew up in an upper-middle-class school district with decent teachers. I did track in middle school and some of high school, and I've had 2 boyfriends. Now I'm studying for a career in occupational therapy because I feel the field is undervalued and provides tremendous help to people. I'm giving you this background because there is a strange misconception that if you want to kill someone, then you're either sick in the head or you have anger management issues. But it's very apparent that I don't fall into either of those categories. It's true that most murder cases are in a domestic setting where someone loses control of their anger or something. But the thing is that those people kill under provocation, whether by a singular outburst or by a slow-burning series of misfortunes. Those people kill because in that brief moment, they want a specific someone, for a specific reason, to be hurt or killed. What I'm talking about is wanting to kill someone for no specific reason. Maybe just to see what it's like. Do you ever get that? I wouldn't know how others feel because it's not something I ever talked about. But I've been curious about what it's like to kill someone ever since I was a child. Not killing anyone in particular, just a random person. It's always just fascinated me that if I put my mind to it, I could approach anyone, and in 5 minutes they would be completely gone from this earth. But I've never done so for a couple of reasons. First of all, for most of my life, it was logistically impossible for me to do without getting caught. I only got my driver's license a couple years ago, and even then, the preparations would take too much time, definitely stirring suspicion. It was only once I started college that I realized that this was no longer an obstacle. Another reason is that I was afraid of causing harm to too many people. You might laugh reading that, and at how hypercritical it sounds, but let me explain. Why should I feel bad about killing someone if they're too dead to care? Who would I be feeling bad for? Contrarily, it's the grief of the living that I'd rather not be responsible for. Because of this, I knew it would take a good deal of research before finding a suitable person to kill, and I've never had the means to do so. Again, until I started college. And now, having just experienced it, I'd say it was pretty satisfying in the end. Something I would try again? Probably not, since my curiosity has already been satisfied. It really wouldn't be the same a second time. But anyway, if by any chance you're also curious to kill someone, then you're welcome to take notes, smiley face. I started a hobby of people watching soon after I entered college. People watching is interesting to me because it's taking one of the infinite extras in your life and turning them into a main character. Without them knowing, of course. It's so easy to forget that every single one of the hundreds of strangers you pass every day has a life story as deep and complex as your own. One thing I noticed about people watching and watching to kill someone is that you are a more constant awareness of this. When I find a person to observe, their story slowly becomes more clear to me over time. Gaps being filled. It really is amazing. I usually went to grocery stores on weekends and looked around in people's shopping carts. If I saw something that interested me, I decided to observe that person for a little bit. Of course, since my goal was to find someone to kill, I ruled out anyone who had children or a partner with them. Wedding rings were another telltale sign. So, if you don't want to get killed, wear a wedding ring. Anyway, so maybe once a weekend I would find someone who fit my criteria, at which point I would follow them home and note their address. From there, it became incredibly easy to investigate a little bit more. Most people have normal work hours, meaning I could spend afternoons going through their mail or looking around in their house. I repeated this with several people and had one close call, but for varying reasons I didn't really feel satisfied enough with them to kill any of them. I started getting a bit impatient and thought that I might just settle for killing the man named Devin, even though I didn't really want to kill someone wealthy. But then I came across someone new, someone who just felt perfect. The feeling only strengthened as I investigated her further, and I knew that she would be the one for me to kill. A young-looking woman I met at the grocery store. As per usual, she was doing some light shopping with a basket. Her hair was wavy and dark brown, sitting elegantly on her slumped shoulders and surrounding her tired-looking face. Her bare fingers told me that she might be single, but beyond that, my gut was almost certain of it. This woman just seemed so plain, really. I guess I felt a greater acuity for the personal lives of strangers, even since I started my people watching. But the way she carried herself, I just got the feeling that if she suddenly died, nobody would be around to miss her. Of course. Oh, I still wanted to investigate her a bit. I followed my usual routine of checking out her place during her work hours. I learned immediately from her mail that her name was Linda Watson. Linda lived in a quiet apartment complex, her mailbox easily accessible right outside her door. Instead of quickly shuffling through it, I decided I could take her mail back to my dorm and return it before she was finished with work. She only lived about 15 minutes from me. I did some research and learned how to open and reseal the envelopes without damaging them, which took some technique along with a hairdryer, rubbing alcohol, and Q-tips. This made it easy for me to learn a little more about her. Linda was a 33-year-old woman who worked for a small accounting firm. I'd rather not name the place outright. Her birthday was December 11th, which coincidentally was approaching in a couple weeks. I also managed to find a bank statement that gave me a nice look into how she's been spending her past month. It was at this point I realized that my assessment of Linda Watson as an extremely plain woman was pretty spot on, because there was absolutely nothing interesting on the list. A trip of Old Navy, a bunch of Starbucks, something about $40 from Amazon, no restaurants, no movies, nothing that would really imply she was spending any time socializing. That aside, I also found a cooking magazine, so I guess she was into cooking. This feels like, when you do something like commit a murder, and you get this feeling like, what's the point of that if no one knows I did it? You want to brag about your accomplishment? So you do something like this, and this results in you getting caught. Anyway, and that's one of the reasons why it's hard to lie low after a crime, is because if you feel like you did it without getting caught, you kind of want people to know you did it before you died. Because it's like a breath, I don't know, there's something psychological about it. Anyway. Not that I've actually committed crimes or anything. Obviously, I'm not telling you about it, so... Okay. Apartments are harder to break into than suburban homes because there are fewer doors and windows. Every time I got Linda's mail, I could check the front door and the windows in the back, but they were always locked. This is a bit frustrating because I was really interested in getting into her house. So I came up with a short sort of plan I thought would be fun, even if it didn't work. Last Saturday, I visited Linda Watson's apartment complex, as I would on weekends. The difference is, at this time, I wanted her to be home. I thought it would be interesting to have a conversation with her. If I got lucky, I could take advantage of the situation to discreetly unlock a window from the inside. So I walked up to her door wearing nothing warmer than a light sweatshirt and knocked. The adrenaline rush was crazy. I was afraid I might screw something up. The door opened and in front of me stood Linda Watson, exactly as I remembered her from the grocery store. It was at that moment, making eye contact for the first time, that I realized I was running the risk of beginning to care about this person. As selfish as it is, I couldn't kill a person I cared about, even if it's a 33-year-old woman standing in a doorway with a slightly perplexed look on her face giving me a reserved hello. Arms crossed from the cold, I shyly returned Linda's greeting. I explained that I was walking my dog near the woodsy area behind the back of her apartment, and that she had gotten away. I had been looking at my dog for an hour and was wondering if Linda may have seen him roaming about. Of course, Linda sympathetically apologized for the situation, and that she could be of use to me, but that she would keep an eye out. I wore a defeated expression in response, apologizing in return for troubling her. It somehow went exactly as I hoped. Linda invited me inside to warm up a bit with some coffee. I outwardly hesitated before accepting her offer, although on the inside I wanted to jump through the door and hug her for cooperating so well. And that's how Linda Watson ended up with a 19-year-old girl next to her on the couch. Who knows if it was just a nice gesture or if she really had no better way to spend her Saturdays than talking to some kid she just met, who happens to be interested in killing her. Linda soon learned that my name was Maria. It's not. And that I attended a nearby community college. I don't. I was a little bit nervous that she would ask me too many questions because I didn't have many answers prepared. I was able to steer the conversation towards her, and she was pretty happy to talk. I asked what she does, and she told me that she works for an accounting firm. I already knew that, communicating with outside clients and keeping records. I told her I was pretty nervous about growing up. She told me to enjoy college and to make lots of friends because there's less opportunities once you start working. When I asked if she was married or anything, she laughed. Of course, I knew she wasn't married, but I wanted to hear more about her love life. She said that she doesn't currently have a boyfriend. I guess she's at least had boyfriends, but who knows how long ago. When I asked her about kids, she said she doesn't want them until she gets a better job. On top of that, she told me that her family has a history of some genetic diseases, such as arthritis and depression, which she's afraid to give to her kids. It's funny that she mentioned that, because when I asked to use the bathroom, I noticed a tube of prescription pills on the sink. It was labeled duloxetine, which I looked up later and discovered that is in fact an antidepressant. I was joking, thought that maybe by killing her I'd be doing her a favor, but quickly decided I was a terrible person for coming up with that. The rest of the visit was pretty dull. We talked about food and some other mundane stuff before I eventually made an excuse to leave. I didn't get the chance to unlock a window or anything like that, but I didn't really feel the need to go through her apartment anymore. As early as the drive back to my dorm, I was already thinking of how I would best like to kill Linda Watson. The choice was between effectiveness and fun. I decided to go with fun because it would be way more satisfying to kind of dissect her as I killed her, rather than just getting it done and calling it a day. Fast forward 1 week to December 13th. Today, actually, Linda Watson turned 34 two days ago. I made a fun little wager with myself, where if Linda was spending her birthday weekend alone, I would pay her a visit and kill her. If she was out or had company, I would stop by next week or something instead. So this morning I drove over to Lowe's and bought an axe. Wow, okay, I guess Dan Salvato was inspired by Crime and Punishment. I definitely thought of Crime and Punishment immediately at the start of this. Again, I expected you were laughing, but that's also kind of the point. An axe is a kind of cliche and movies thing that I actually thought it would be the most fun. That's exactly like the motivation, like Crime and Punishment. For some reason, the main character, which I forget his name because it's Russian, wanted to kill the old lady with an axe. He didn't know why, it just had to be an axe for some reason. Swinging it at someone and everything, it was really entertaining image. They actually had a bunch of different axes, so I picked one that had a good weight, but was still light enough for me to swing quickly. The drive after getting an axe was when the adrenaline really picked up. All that kept going through my mind on the way over was, wow, I'm really doing this. Not in a bad way, just like a surprise, just a typo? Not in a bad way, just like a surprise, this is real life sort of thing. I also got the strange rush of recollections of the time I spent with Linda. It was like my life was flashing before my eyes, except it was just the rather mundane hour I spent with Linda, like snippets of our conversations, the sound of her laugh, her facial expressions and stuff. I also wondered to myself what the crazy serial killers would be feeling at a time like this. Schizophrenic delusions? Sexual buildup? I have no idea. But what I felt was kind of like ridiculously alert and numb in the senses at the same time. However, that's possible. Before getting out of the car, I had the sense to stuff the axe into my backpack to look a little less ridiculous, walking across the parking lot. The handle was sticking out, but that didn't really matter. At that point, my heart was pounding so hard, I could feel my throat throbbing. I tried controlling my breath, but it's really hard not to breathe fast when your heart is pounding like that. This story actually makes you nervous. I reached Linda Watts' door and quickly put my ear to it. After setting down my backpack, I heard a voice that wasn't hers. Company? No, it was just the TV, mixed with her occasional tapping footsteps behind the door. I actually kept my ear there for a really freaking long time because I wanted to make absolutely sure nobody was over. Probably 10 minutes of that and a lot of reassuring myself convinced me. I quickly opened my backpack zipper and held the axe in my hands. My fiercely shaking hands. What the hell was this kind of reaction that my body is making? I told my body to shut up, but it's no big deal. But of course, it wouldn't listen. It was actually bizarre how much my hands were shaking. It must be the adrenaline buildup. I rolled my eyes at myself and got my hand to rest on the doorknob. If it's locked, I'll knock. It'll be basically the same. I took a deep breath and forced my muscles into action. I swiftly turned the doorknob. Not locked in one movement, I opened up the door and slipped inside. Linda Watson just a few steps away into the kitchen. I see, she was in the middle of cooking. She immediately jumped and turned around, startled. I expected that. Quickly, I let go of the doorknob and adjusted the axe into both hands. In the following split second, I realized that she would probably start to make a lot of noise. Looking back, I'm an idiot for not considering that. Just as Linda's mouth opened to speak, maybe even started speaking, I forcibly swung my axe into the side of her head. But my axe, facing backwards, hit her with the blunt end of the blade. I actually did this on purpose, because in that split second, I somehow decided that it would be the way to keep her noise to a minimum. Yeah, exactly like Crime and Punishment. It's like I had to do it with the blunt side. Anyway, it actually worked. I felt barely any resistance in the swing as I collided with her head, locking it clean aside. Linda's half-formed syllable came out as kind of a weird grunt. A noisy exhalation is probably the best I could describe it. That happened at the same time as her head smacked into the cabinet from the force, and she fell backwards without any ability to keep her balance. I didn't hesitate at all to keep swinging at her while she was half lying down on the ground, this time my axe facing the right way. I didn't really know where to swing, so I kind of just started hacking at her collarbone area and chest. I didn't feel like the axe was going too deep, but there was a nice thunk sound every time the axe embedded into her. I even felt the soft sinking sensation ripple into my hands, like the axe was a kind of physical extension of my sense of touch. On a whim, I swung once at her throat, but most of the swing actually missed. I hit the floor by accident, causing a loud, dull whack to resonate throughout the apartment. I didn't have time to think about it. I swung again with better aim and got a more centered hit, feeling the bone or cartilage of whatever what is in there, so I must have split it open. Right after that, I decided to swing at her face, and I got this diagonal cut along her nose and mouth, which felt pretty good, so I did it once more. I finally briefly stopped to survey the damage. Linda was bleeding ridiculously. The blood was kind of coming out in waves in sync with her beating heart, probably. It was pooling all around her and riding along the cracks between the tiles. Her light blue skirt was all torn up and stained dark, kind of mixed with a fleshy mess around her chest. It was all just glistening red. Her face wasn't much better, covered in dripping red at this point, and her lips were kind of hanging off, revealing red-stained teeth in a really weird way, like a zombie or something. Linda wasn't dead, though. Her limbs were kind of weakly, aimlessly trying to move while she was stuck on her back. More than anything, she reminded me of a bug that you crush it, but it still pitifully moves its legs around before it dies completely. That's basically what she was doing, but I didn't know how long it would take for her to die or what kind of condition she was in. I ended up grabbing a big knife that was on the counter that she was using to cut up meat. Trying to step around the blood, I reached down and carved into the upper part of her neck, trying to sort of saw it from the left side to the right. It was a little awkward because the area was so soft and squishy around the knife as I was cutting, but the sensation was completely different from the axe. It actually felt kind of like I was cutting a tough piece of raw meat, which I guess technically I was. The blood started pouring out, and I hoped that I severed the most major arteries in there. It must have worked because after a moment, Linda's limb movements kind of just made the strength kind of just had the strength drained from them. Soon, resting still on the floor, I took a few seconds to catch my breath. No time to stick around and think about the experience. I shook the knife blade through a dirty pan in the sink to clean off the blood, then threw the knife into my backpack. I did the same with the axe. I also took her laptop that was sitting on the counter. I had some recipe open for veal and mushrooms. I didn't really take the laptop to use it, since I have a perfectly good one myself, but that I got for college. I just wanted to look through it for fun. I finally went outside and closed the door behind me. I got some blood on my sweater and jeans, but funnily enough, I actually anticipated that, so I wore dark colors. The drive back to my dorm was just a constant replay of the experience in my head. I guess that's still kind of happening even now, actually. But it felt pretty nice. Linda Watson is dead. I kind of let the weight of that sink in. The sensation of having completely removed a human life from existence. It's crazy. I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, I threw the axe and knife into a dumpster on campus, which I think is picked up every Monday, so they'll be gone by then. My roommate goes home on the weekend, so I have the dorm to myself today. It gave me the chance to go through Linda's website history. I was right in thinking that where her deepest secrets would lie. There was actually a lot of dirty stuff, like the names of websites or porn videos and stories and things like that. Same with her searches. A lot of the websites were boring, like cooking websites and recipes. The game websites like Jewel and stuff. Oh wow, I actually remember that. I actually played that. Oh no. I eventually got to the 1 week ago section of her history, and it gave me a chill. There were a whole bunch of searches like methods of suicide, how to tie a noose, dangerous household chemicals, carbon monoxide poisoning, like a lot of them. She was probably ready to write a book on suicide after all the research she did. So I guess Linda was contemplating suicide. I wonder if it was influenced by her depression. The irony is actually striking. Maybe Linda was going to die anyway, or maybe she couldn't find the courage to do it. If that was the case, I almost literally gave her a birthday present by killing her. That's actually really comical in a messed up way, and it leaves a weird taste in my mouth. The part I don't get is that I didn't see any of those searches up until the 1 week ago section. Nothing more recent than that. I ended up throwing the laptop in the dumpster with the other stuff. It's been a few hours since then, so I've had some time to calmly think about everything. Like I said, it was pretty satisfying, and I'm glad I finally got around to it. I feel like I can finally cross it off my bucket list, or like I'm tying loose ends with myself. This is probably the first and last time I'll write the name Linda Watson. It's back to living a normal college life, except I might do some people watching every now and then because it's definitely fun and interesting. But I'll always wonder how many people there are like me. I'm sure there are a lot, because there is just nothing strange about it to me, being curious about killing someone. Sadly, it's something that people can't exactly just talk about, so I guess I'll never know. I'm sure that anyone will just lie about it, even if you ask them. But can't help but wonder if that person in the grocery store who stares at you as you pass by might be considering that it would be like to kill you. What it would be like to kill you. If I could, I would tell them all about it so they could decide for themselves. But who knows? Maybe I got lucky and that person is you. Actually, really, really hope so. Somebody just like, so you left that in a box in the mall somewhere. That's good stuff. Okay. This image is formed by like correctly interpreting Natsuki.char. We don't really know who this is. It's just an image you get if you take the image. Natsuki.char is an image. It's actually a PNG or something, and then you convert it from rectangular to polar, and you get this. And make it like positive. It's a negative originally. This is what happens if you decode Monaco.char. However you do that. This is what you get. This text file. This is what you get. Can you hear me? Who are you? I can't see you. But I know you're there. Yeah, you can definitely hear me. You've been watching for a while now, right? I guess I should introduce myself, or something. My name is, actually that's stupid. You already know my name, sorry. Anyway, I'm guessing if you were able to put a stop to this, you would have done it by now. I mean, I know you're not evil or anything. I know you're not like evil or anything, because you've already helped me so much. I should really thank you for that, for everything you've done. You're really kind of a friend to me, so thank you so much. I think more than anything else, I really don't want it all to be for nothing. Everyone else is dead. Maybe you already know that. I'm sure you do, actually. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? Well, there's a lot of stuff I don't understand. I don't know if it's even possible for me to understand it. But I know that this isn't my only story. Refer to some other game. I can see that now really clearly. And I think everyone else has had the same kind of experience, right? Everyone's figured out this whole DDLC stuff. Some kind of deja vu. It's The third eye, right? Anyway, I could be totally wrong about this. Right, the ability to see the player is the third eye. Anyway, I could be totally wrong about this, but I really think you might be able to do something. I think you might be able to go back, or however you want to put it, to go back and tell them what's going to happen. If they know ahead of time, then they should be able to avoid it. They should. If they remember their time with me in the other worlds, they should remember what I tell them. Yeah, I really think that might be possible. It's up to you. That's so ever 17 like. Oh well. I just got any eyes for that. Never mind, I know that's wrong. But this is my story. It's time to be a non-advertiser friendly hero, both of us. 2018. Cool. Well, the game didn't come out in 2018. We're still waiting. Anyway, this is just like some random personal stuff. I decided to dig through some of my old poetry. I never write poems, but sometimes when you are like in school, like elementary school, you're kind of forced to for a grade. And so I like look through. This good part's gonna be all oral. What kind of stuff I wrote down when I was in fifth and sixth grade? Because I actually have like these bound books of poems I had to write as a fifth grader and a sixth grader for a grade. And basically, the poems for fifth grade they were all like very much like just getting something to um, just get something on the paper to get it, just something, right? So I'd write stuff like, wow, these pictures are really weird. Staircase, zigzags upward, climbing, pushing, lifting, tire ring when you climb upward, ladder. Extremely uninteresting things like that. Um, the worst ones were the limericks. Like, this is like, because the rhyme pattern is so specific, it's like you essentially end up fitting a square peg in a round hole, where the square peg with a round hole, the square peg is like three times as big as the round hole. Like for example, I wrote something like this. I was arguing with a boy named Ro. He said something that made me go, yow. I said, yeah, that's right. And I looked to my right. I thought we were arguing now. Anyway. Um, so just like these object things. Um, but then if you go on to sixth grade, um, let me see here. I would write things like this: alive, moving, living, breathing, thinking, consuming, active, doomed, attractive, natural, destroyed, decayed, lost, forgotten, stationary, dead. Politics. Deceiving, tricky, taking, promising, rallying, making your blood boil, lies. It lies on the ground. It has been dead a long time. It is known as dirt. Bones seem to be strong. They cannot take on metal stuff. People should obtain since their, I don't know what I mean by obtain there, but people should obtain since their bodies have not much power when falling from great high steps. This is really weird. I heard of a quite lonely snake whose only friend was a rake. Yet those who are lascive are very persuasive. How many traders can they make? What does that even mean? Like I have no idea. It's like so random. And then here's like another Like another weirdly dark poem from when I was in 6th grade. They've caught me. They will never let up. I'm doomed. They'll never quit. They do this as a passion, unimaginable pain. They're not human. Except I didn't like write it they are, I just wrote there, like THEER, because I didn't know how to spell at the time. You can pass out looking at them. They are half skeletons. It's illegal. I should have freedom to quit, yet nobody can tell. They are armed. They're evil, except they're evil and ambitious. Except instead of saying they are, I wrote THEIR, because again, I couldn't spell. Hungry for my doom. Big mistake. I sent out my resume. Redefining work. Anyway, that's what happens if you force very young Stagulator, if you hold a grade over his head to write poems. That's what he writes. I didn't write any original poems for this, because I didn't think of anything good. And my brain is just not the type that thinks of anything good when it comes to poems, so I just abstained. But there we go, that's all the stuff from DDLC+. There will be probably one more video about DDLC after this. And it'll be... I won't describe it, I'll just say there's going to be one more. But that's that, whatever. Anyway, if you can figure out, it's a challenge for you all, if you can figure out how to unlock the secret, if there even is one, of the Nothing is Real poem in DDLC+, well, that's a good thing. Try to figure it out.